My parents left me in foster care at 12 to travel with my sister. Now they're jobless, desperate, and reaching out. So I gave them exactly what they deserved. My name's Adam Blake, and last Thanksgiving, I didn't just serve dinner, I served closure. Thanksgiving used to mean something. Used to. These days, it's just a calendar reminder that blood doesn't guarantee warmth. And sometimes, forgiveness is just a word people use to avoid awkward silences. This year, the table was set at my house, not theirs. It was the first time in over 15 years that my parents and my sister Emily would be under the same roof as me. Not since they left me at that group home in Cincinnati when I was 12. Said they were chasing opportunity. Said it was temporary. Said a lot of things they never backed up. They never came back. Not when I got pneumonia and ended up in the hospital. Not for my high school graduation. Not even when I sent the college acceptance letter I paid a stranger to hand deliver. I guess the beaches in Malaysia or wherever they were at the time didn't allow guilt to roam freely. And yet, here they were now. All of them. Arriving in my driveway in a beat-up SUV with one working headlight and a cracked windshield that made it look like the thing had been punched in the face. I watched from the window as my dad adjusted his threadbare coat and my mom reached for Emily's arm to help her balance over the icy curb. Funny how they all looked like life had chewed them up and spit them out in slow motion. Jobs gone. Savings dried up. Emily's influencer career had apparently flatlined after one too many authentic breakdowns. And now they needed somewhere to land. I'd invited them. That part was true. But what they didn't know was this wasn't about reconciliation. This was about witness. I wanted them to see who I became without them, not in a gloating way. Not at first, but because I needed proof that the damage wasn't permanent. I opened the door before they could knock. My mom smiled like she still owned my trust. Dad mumbled something about the weather. Emily, all cheekbones and chip polish, said, "Wow, Adam, you clean up nice." I said nothing, just stepped aside and let them in. The table was already set candles, cloth napkins, name cards, the kind of spread you only see in family drama movies where someone cries into the cranberry sauce. It was perfect, painstakingly perfect, because underneath every polished fork and folded napkin was a truth I couldn't keep buried anymore. I didn't want them here out of love. I wanted them here because I needed to feel the weight shift. I needed the moment where the abandoned son didn't just open the door, he owned the house behind it. Dinner was 3 hours away, but the reckoning had already begun. They made themselves at home like they still had a claim on the word. My mother walked straight to the living room, touching picture frames she wasn't in. My father wandered the kitchen like he built it. Emily perched on the arm of my leather couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong, like the last time we spoke hadn't ended with her blocking my number after I asked why she never wrote back from Bali. The turkey was still in the oven, filling the house with the kind of warmth I'd always imagined family was supposed to feel like. But the room stayed cold, not from the thermostat, but from the past. We sat down around 4-0. I carved, they complimented. The tension wrapped tighter around the table with every bite. At first, the conversation was the usual. Politics, weather, Emily's latest failed brand deal she blamed on the algorithm. They talked like nothing had ever happened. Like we hadn't lost 20 years of shared history. Like the term foster care wasn't the giant elephant sitting on the centerpiece. I kept my cool. I nodded. I smiled when I needed to. I even offered seconds. And then, somewhere between dessert and delusion, my father cleared his throat. "We've been working on some estate planning," he said casually, as if he wasn't talking to the child they left behind. "Trying to make sure things are in order. Emily's been helping." "Helping?" I repeated, my tone even. My mom jumped in. "Just logistics, sweetheart. You know how complicated these things can be. Transferring assets, power of attorney, you've got your own life, and we didn't want to burden you." That word again. Burden. The same one they used in 2001 when they dropped me off at the shelter with a plastic bag of clothes and said they'd be back after their trip. Emily finally looked up. "We didn't think you'd be interested, Adam." My fork hit the plate, louder than I intended. "I take it there's nothing listed under my name," I said. My father gave a sheepish smile. "Well, you've always been so independent, we figured—" "No, I interrupted. You decided. Silence. Real silence. Like the table had stopped breathing. You left me, I said calmly, but there was no mistaking the quake under the surface. You disappeared, and now you're back. And the first real thing you tell me is that you've signed everything over to the person who blocked me on Instagram for saying I missed mom. Emily rolled her eyes. It's not like that. No, I said. It's exactly like that. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a drink. Not out of anger, not even out of grief, but out of clarity. The game hadn't changed. They had. They weren't trying to make things right. They were trying to make things convenient. And in that moment, with pumpkin pie going stale in the oven, I knew this wasn't dinner. This was the last course in a story I didn't write but was damn sure going to finish. I didn't go back to the table right away. I stood in the kitchen for a few minutes, the glass in my hand growing warmer, my reflection bending in the microwave door. I could still hear them whispering behind me, Mom trying to smooth things over, Dad sighing like he was the victim here, Emily tapping her spoon against her mug like she couldn't be bothered. It wasn't just the inheritance. It was everything it represented. They'd signed me off long ago first, emotionally, then financially. This wasn't estate planning. It was legacy rewriting. They were carving me out of the story like I'd never mattered. I walked back into the dining room, not to argue. I'd done that too many times in my head already. I sat down and looked directly at my father. Who made the decision? I asked. He looked up from his untouched pie. Adam, don't do this. No, I said, sharper now. Answer me. Who decided that Emily gets the house? The accounts? Everything? My mother reached over to squeeze his hand, like they were bracing for a storm. Emily sighed, loud and performative. This again? I turned to her. You disappeared for 4 years, blocked me, lied about Mom's health. You didn't even fly in until the night before the funeral, and now you're executor? Her face flushed. I was dealing with things. So was I said. I was burying her. That shut her up. My dad finally spoke, voice low. It's not about favoritism. It's about trust. You've always been distant, Adam. You never let us back in. I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. You left me in a system at 12, and I'm the one who's distant? You never tried to reconnect, he said. And my mom nodded like that made sense. I sent birthday cards. I emailed. I even tried calling when Mom went in for surgery. You said you were too busy in Bangkok, I replied. You abandoned me and then blamed me for not playing catch. The air in the room changed. My words landed like punches on a bruise they thought had faded. The silence was deeper now, heavier. No one reached for dessert anymore. Then I stood up and pulled the old manila envelope from the drawer by the fridge. I'd kept it sealed for a year, ever since Mom handed it to me outside the hospice, her hands shaking, her eyes tired but knowing. I tossed it onto the table. What's that? My mom asked. Something she left for me, I said. Said to open it if things ever got messy. My voice dropped. And guess what, Mom? They're messy. I didn't open it, not yet. Not in front of them. But just placing it there was enough. I saw it in their faces. The doubt, the fear, that maybe they didn't know the whole story. That maybe she hadn't forgiven them either. The room was quiet again. But this time, I wasn't the one walking on eggshells. I waited until the dishes were rinsed, until my family had slunk off into their guest rooms or the fold-out sofa without another word, pretending like nothing had happened again. That night, I sat at the kitchen table alone, the envelope still in front of me. The paper was soft with time, a little frayed at the edges. My name was written in Mom's familiar looping script. Adam just that. Not sweetheart, not my son. She always knew how to say the most with the least. I opened it slowly. One page. Handwritten, blue ink. Slanted and neat, even as her body had started failing. If you're reading this, it means they tried to forget what they did, and you tried to forgive them too hard. Adam, I've watched you carry the weight of what they dropped. You weren't the burden. They were just weak, and weakness hates mirrors. I swallowed. My chest ached like I'd been holding my breath for a decade. They always chose ease. You chose resilience. I never told you enough, but I saw it all. Every part of it. Every step you took alone. Every time you didn't ask for help because no one ever showed up when you did. I stayed quiet longer than I should have. I thought they'd change. I thought they'd come back for you. They never did. And that's on me too. I blinked back tears. But don't let them gaslight you into guilt, Adam. You are not the villain for surviving their abandonment. You are not cruel for drawing boundaries they taught you were necessary. You don't owe them your life just because they gave you theirs. That's not family, that's control. I sat back, staring at her words. They felt like oxygen in a room I didn't realize I'd been suffocating in. Whatever they've taken, let them keep it. You don't need their approval or their apology to be free. You already built your life from ash. That makes you the phoenix, Adam not the orphan. I let the letter fall to the table. My hands were shaking, not from anger, not even grief. Relief. For the first time in 20 years, someone had said it out loud. Someone had named it, and not just someone her, the one person whose silence I had mistaken for complicity when it had actually been regret. I looked around the kitchen. Every inch of this home had been paid for by me. The walls were painted in shades I chose. The table was where I'd built meals for friends who actually showed up. This wasn't a stand-in for a family. It was a monument to what I'd survived. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it in my desk drawer not to forget it, but to remember who I was when I needed reminding. Mom had given me her final word, and now it was time for mine. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that hums with discomfort no one wants to name. I could hear the faint clink of a spoon in a coffee mug Mom. Probably. Dad was still asleep on the couch. Snoring like the weight of nothing he did still wore him out. I stepped outside with my coffee. The air was sharp, the kind that made your lungs sting just a little. It was cleansing, honest. For once, I didn't feel like I had to brace for anything. I just breathed. By noon, they were packed. Emily avoided my eyes the whole time. She hadn't said a word to me since the night before. I didn't chase it. If silence was all she had left to offer, I'd accept it. My dad stood by the door holding his coat like he wanted to say something meaningful. He settled for, "Thanks for dinner." I nodded. "Safe drive." My mom paused before stepping out. "Adam, if you ever—" "I won't," I said gently. "Not cruel, just final." She gave a tight smile, then walked out. The door closed behind them like the click of a lock sealing an old room shut for good. I stood there a long while, not because I was sad, but because I wasn't. I wasn't empty. I wasn't aching for something to be different. I wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. I walked back to the kitchen, wiped the table clean, and pulled out my laptop. I'd been staring at that blinking cursor on a blank document for over a year now, always telling myself I'd write something. A blog, a book, a letter to the version of me that still needed closure. Now, I knew exactly where to begin. My parents left me in foster care when I was 12. Years later, they came empty, desperate, and still unwilling to admit what they'd done. But this isn't their story. This is mine. It's about what happens when the child they abandoned grows up and learns that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, and who you become when no one does. The words poured out, like they'd been waiting all this time behind a dam I didn't know I could break. Later that afternoon, I drove to the lake house, the one I bought last year but hadn't told anyone about. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place you don't escape to, but return to. I stood on the porch, watching the water ripple against the shore, and I felt it settle deep in my chest. Closure. Not the kind they give you with an apology, but the kind you give yourself when you stop begging for it. I didn't need them to acknowledge me anymore. I had the letter. I had the truth. And most of all, I had the pen. This time, the story belonged to me.